going on? Welcome back to my channel. So the time has come in the Diddy trial for his verdict of being not guilty or guilty. So today is Wednesday and court is not in session today. You know what I'm saying? So it starts tomorrow that the defense and the prosecutors are going to be giving their closing arguments on if Diddy going to be guilty or not guilty. You know what I'm saying? They're going to give their closing arguments to the jury, and the jury going to go in and decide their verdict. You know, will we get a verdict Friday or maybe Monday? I'm thinking maybe Tuesday. You know what I'm saying? Will it be a hung jury? Will they find this guy guilty on all charges, or will they just find him guilty on maybe one or two charges? You know what I'm saying? This is a big case. You know what I mean? So I can't really wait to see what the jury decide, because in my opinion, man, it's 50-50 in my opinion. You know what I'm saying? 50% is guilty and 50% is not guilty. But news came out today that the prosecutors are doubling down on charges that they charged Diddy. So a lot of the charges that they're charging with, they seem like they're taking those charges away to really simplify that, maybe for the jury to really understand. So let's read the article, and then we're going to play a video really explaining the whole situation of why the prosecutors dropped some charges. Let's get into it. So we got prosecutors want to double down elements of RICO charge, simplifying for a jury's sake. In a stunning move, the day before closing arguments in Diddy's federal criminal trial in NYC, prosecutors have pulled back on some key testimony during the trial, specifically attempted kidnapping, attempted arson, and aiding and abetting sex trafficking. Wow. Prosecutors said in a letter to Judge Arson, the government is following his honest instructions to streamline the jury instructions. The reality prosecutors seem to feel they've fallen flat on proving Diddy allegedly kidnapped former employee Capricorn Clark. This is Capricorn Clark right here, one of Diddy's former assistants, who was taken to a building and given a lie detector test to determine if she stole Diddy's jewelry and Cassie when she was allegedly held at the Atlanta hotel. More surprising, prosecutors are not pursuing the attempted arson claim that Diddy blew up Kid Cudi's car, and in jealous rage during the trial, prosecutors never directly linked Diddy to a fire. Wow, to the fire. Both of these charges related to racketeering or RICO charge Diddy faces. As for the aiding and abetting sex trafficking charge, prosecutors don't explain what elements of sex trafficking they will 86 from the jury instructions. Prosecutors are not dropping the various sex trafficking charges, only elements of them, and specifically aiding and abetting. Prosecutors do say in their letter they want an instruction that just because women, Cassie and Jane, gave prior consent to sexual acts, it does not mean that it can never be withdrawn. Prosecutors also say juries should be told just because a woman, Jane, received compensation does not preclude a finding of forced labor, which relates to sex trafficking. And as for sex trafficking, prosecutors want jurors to know neither physical restraint of alleged victims nor commercial sex acts are required to prove coercion in sex trafficking. Wow, that's crazy. This is very interesting right here, man. They dropping these charges right here. Wow. So maybe this can help the prosecutors, or maybe this can kind of hurt the prosecutors. You know what I'm saying? Maybe this can be good in defense. Defense attorneys good for Diddy. You know, that they kind of streamlining these charges, not making it so difficult for the jury to really understand. Just because they wasn't like tied down, you know what I'm saying, they still maybe could have got away, but then again they kind of stayed because it was coercion and being compensated for paying rent, you know what I'm saying, going on these lavish trips and stuff like that. So I'm guessing that's what the prosecutor is really trying to explain to the jurors, man. But let's play this video right here from Court TV.
Welcome back to Court TV Live. I'm Julia Janae. Thank you for being with us. We are in day 30 of the Sean Diddy Combs trial out in New York, and a lot has been happening, to say the least. We want to check in now with Court TV's legal correspondent, Kelly Craft, who is outside of the New York federal courthouse right now. And Kelly, a lot has happened today. It seems that the case against Sean Combs is changing ahead of closing arguments. A lot going on. Good afternoon to you, Julia. So behind me, the federal courthouse, things were supposed to get started here at 12 Eastern time. So that was going to be the charge conference. The jury is not here today, so they had the day off. They will be back tomorrow for closing arguments. But we started hearing early this morning that things were getting pushed back, as well as the prosecutors were streamlining their case against Sean Diddy Combs. So we're going to hear more once court gets underway at 2 p.m. Eastern. So the charge conference was moved from beginning at 12 Eastern to 2 p.m. Eastern. So we'll get more details as to the charges and how that charge conference will go. But important because the judge had told the federal prosecutors that he really wants them to streamline their case. So the prosecutors wrote a letter to the judge saying that they have now streamlined their case. And what are they doing? They are pulling back on some of those charges. The attempted kidnapping. This is in relation to Capricorn Clark, who said that she was kidnapped by Sean Combs and his buddies to go over to Kid Cudi's home. And then she was forced to wait in the car. This was her testimony while they went inside Kid Cudi's home. And then eventually, what the prosecutors had said led to the attempted arson of Kid Cudi's Porsche. So attempted kidnapping and then attempted arson. Those are two of the charges that they are pulling back on, because what we're hearing is they're saying there's no information that they can actually now tie, that they can't maybe prove, tie Sean Combs to that attempted arson of Kid Cudi's Porsche. Now, Kid Cudi came to the stand, Julia, and he testified, and he basically said it was no doubt in his mind that he had something to do with it. But defense counsel on cross-examination clearly pointed out there were no fingerprints, there was no indication that Sean Combs was tied to that torching of his Porsche. So again, attempted kidnapping, attempted arson, also aiding and abetting in regard to sex trafficking. So again, prosecutors are framing this as we've needed to streamline our case. The judge has asked us to do so. That's what we're doing here. Now, some on the streets are just saying, well, they just didn't have enough to prove those charges. So again, we're going to hear more at that charge conference, Julia.
It's a fair question, Kelly, because this is coming after they brought those witnesses into the courthouse. Kid Cudi's only purpose, and correct me if I'm wrong, was to testify about this arson. So you have this celebrity witness come in, and to now, on the eve of closing arguments, to say, oh, we're no longer going forward with it because we're streamlining things for the jury, it just doesn't quite make sense. But
yeah, that is kind of crazy right there that they had this celebrity come in and really testify to really make Diddy look real bad. And now y'all not really going to use that, you know what I'm saying, to really convict this guy. Yo, that's crazy.
Tell us about what's coming up, because I understand the judge at one point had not yet ruled on the motion for a judgment of acquittal that happened yesterday. And normally judges answer that pretty quickly.
Julia, so sometimes in regard to appeals, they do reserve their judgment. It doesn't happen all the time, as you know, as you just mentioned. Usually we hear a ruling from the judge denying those motions all the time, because most of the time those are denied right away. Here, I think just because this case is so huge, so many charges, and now with this new development of prosecutors streamlining their case, he probably thought, well, you know what, I had told prosecutors to streamline the case. Let's see what they end up doing. And now we have a different situation, a different case, if you will, today. So he reserved judgment on that. But yesterday, we really got a glimpse into what the closing arguments are going to be from defense counsel. They went line by line, each one of those charges, saying that prosecutors did not put forth enough evidence to prove any of the charges. So that's exactly what they said during yesterday's motion for judgment of acquittal. But again, so 2 o'clock today, we're going to hear more, Julia. Tomorrow, the closing arguments. And, you know, Sean Diddy Combs, he said yesterday, that was an interesting exchange that he had with the judge, that he was not going to testify, because during that exchange, he even told the judge, he said, you're doing an excellent job, Your Honor, which we never really hear defendants say something like that to the judge. And then when the back and forth was taking place, Sean Diddy Combs, he placed his hands on top of the defense counsel tables and leaned forward when he was asked about testifying and if he thoroughly discussed it with his defense counsel. He then leaned forward and said, and looked at his defense counsel and said, yes, Your Honor, I thoroughly discussed this with my lawyer. So interesting to watch that exchange between him and the judge yesterday, Julia.
Oh yeah, so much.
I mean, it seems like a lot of people kind of reading into Diddy's, since they're reading into Diddy's, like his facial expressions, his body language. You know, I'm seeing that every day within these news outlets that they continue to pay attention to Diddy's outlook on his outfits and stuff like that. And I kind of can understand the outfits, because the outfits can really tell, okay, you're not how you really present yourself in court. You know what I'm saying? So his facial expressions, you know what I'm saying? Did he had his head down? Did he smile? Did he look up? Did he did a little heart thing to his family or whatever? You know what I'm saying? Like, they really, really paying attention. And of course, like, he's not really going to testify, because I'm thinking, like, listen, if Diddy testified, man, the prosecutor's going to eat him alive. And you think Cassie stayed on the stand for 5 days? No, Diddy going to be on the stand for like 10 days. You know what I mean? So it's so much that they're going to continue to ask him and drill him and drill him. You know what I'm saying? So I'm really not surprised that he didn't really testify.
Happened yesterday, and it seems more is happening today. Kelly, I know you're going to keep us updated on what the judge decides on that motion and when we can expect those closing arguments. We'll let you go for now and bring in National Trial Attorney Krista Ramey to get her reaction to what the prosecution is doing. Do you think the jury is going to hold it against the federal government for backing off on these charges, or are they going to not even notice?
Probably won't notice. Really. It happens all the time. You know, I just had a charge conference a couple of days ago. You go through the evidence as it came in at trial, and sometimes you're making concessions. Sometimes you're, fighting to keep things in. But the reality is as an attorney prosecuting a case like this, so high profile, you do not want one single claim to remain in that you cannot prove. First of all, prosecutors are supposed to do justice. They're not just supposed to win. But if you did not make those elements of that crime, for arson, for instance, here, that was a very weak, theory for the arson. I think that, Kid Cudi did not hold up well on cross. We all could agree on that. It really, you can't make it, then why do you keep it in? Because of your ego? And jurors, I think if they do remember it and say, well, where does that Kid Cudi thing fit into all of this? They don't really hold it against anyone, because they probably are thinking, well, they probably didn't really make the case on this, so they didn't put it in here.
Can the defense
I think
point
that's
the finger?
Forgiving.
Do you think the defense can point the finger at the prosecution and say, they told you at the beginning of this there was this arson, and
That's a good
now
question right there.
you're not going to see it on your verdict form or in the jury instructions? Is that allowed, or will everyone sort of ignore it?
I think that everyone will sort of ignore it. There's things that you can point out that are part of a opening statement that the defendant didn't prove, but this is a legal question, really. Ultimately, comes down to is the judge deciding whether or not there was sufficient evidence to put to the jury for that claim, for that arson claim. So on a legal question, one that's not determined by the jury, then the judge, then you can't argue where's the arson, part of this, because the judge has ultimately signed off on that, and probably would have dismissed it on his own had the parties not agreed to it.
And we will see what the judge does with this motion for judgment of acquittal that's still pending. I still think that is strange, but I get what Kelly said. This is a big case, so likely the judge just taking it under advisement. But sometimes we do see things getting thrown out by a judge. Even if it's not the entire case, it'll be pieces or charges in a case. What do you think the likelihood is that we will see other parts of this sex trafficking transportation case thrown out? We only have about 30 seconds.
I don't think none. I don't think you're going to see any more thrown out. I think that what is getting thrown out is, I think the judge is just out of an abundance of caution. Sometimes judges don't like to pull the trigger fast on high profile cases. I think that's what you have here.
Wow, man. This is wow. This is this is wow. Prosecutors not putting in some of the charges that they had before. So like I say, man, tomorrow it's going to be closing arguments for the defense and the prosecutors to really, really dial in everything. And I'm not 100% sure that we already get the ruling on Rule 29 of acquittal. You know what I'm saying? The defense said so much yesterday trying to get this case dismissed or whatever, you know what I'm saying? So I don't think they got a ruling on that yet. And they did, I probably missed that. Somebody let me know in the chat if they did and I missed over it. But listen, I don't know, man. Like I said before, from the beginning to now, towards the end, I'm being consistent that I can't really say that. Listen, Diddy is a horrible person. You know what I'm saying? He beat those women, you know what I mean, and did all those drugs and stuff like that. And don't get me wrong, like I say, he's a horrible, horrible person. But the stuff that he's being charged with, can they find him guilty on that? You know what I'm saying? I'm taking feelings out of it. I'm taking emotion out of it. You know what I'm saying? So I hope the juries also take emotion out of it also, because I know tomorrow the prosecutors might play the video of Cassie getting beat up once again, more than one time. They might play that video again. So that's kind of put more emotion and hate towards Diddy instead of just charging him with the actual charges. I think they might charge him just because they hate this guy and he shouldn't really be on the streets. You know what I'm saying? So that's one thing I don't want. I want them to charge him for what the charges is, not just because you hate the guy. And we all agree that Diddy is a horrible person, but really charge him with, you know what I'm saying? I basically just want a fair trial. You know what I'm saying? Even though I think the guy's a horrible person, he should be in jail. But that's my take. Listen, y'all tell me what y'all think about this whole situation, yo. Let me know what y'all think in the comments. And for the deliberation of the jury, man, I might go live. I'm not sure. I see. But until then, man, tell me what y'all think in the comments. Y'all have a good day. Don't forget to like and subscribe.